everyone who's saying hello in the chat. Yeah, hello to everyone as well saying hi in the chat as well. It's thank you for putting your details up there. So let me get into the screen here. So I guess the essence of today is I want to share with you how I drove growth for an Australian startup to close multiple million-dollar deals in my time. So when I first started in the business in 2015, I had no B2B SaaS experience. But I made a founder to the promise that I made a promise to the founder that I would never stop trying to sell or learning how to sell his business. And it ultimately led me down a different path that I didn't think about. And this is the path that I went on to share some lessons with yourselves. So who am I? So I started selling B2B SaaS for an Australian tech company here called Redeye. Now, the average deal size that the founder was looking for was between $20,000 per month and $45,000 per month on typically 5-year deals. So, and the implementation cost was somewhere between $400,000 to $800,000. So in my time there, I was responsible for closing about 40% of the deals up until I left. So in my journey, what I learned was the typical sales processes and methodologies aren't enough without a strategy. Doing a go-to-market strategy, doing a SWOT analysis, it's just not enough to get clients to buy on a regular basis for B2B SaaS companies. But one thing I did discover is people all over the world make decisions the same way to buy something. And it's really surprising that no one else has identified this. So it doesn't matter if they're in India, United States, Australia, the UK, we all make decisions the same way. And we are both mostly ignoring this in our sales processes. And my goal today is to show you what that is to a certain degree. Now, once I discovered this, I was able to close long pipe sales relatively quickly and reduce the pipeline or length of sale from about 75% in some cases, and was able to quote on high ticket like pricing and close on high ticket pricing, the same pricing once we went through the procurement, because I worked on adding value. This ultimately led me to start my own business where I help B2B businesses now develop their own unique sales strategy. Everyone talks about product market fit, but product market fit is not alone for B2B businesses. We need to align our sales practices or our sales efforts to how our target audiences buy. And that's basically what I've learned to do. So today in the agenda, what I'm going to talk about is how we found.
Sorry to interrupt. So before you continue on with the agenda, so I just want to run a quick poll with our audience, just to make sure we have a pulse of what is coming. So I'm going to just run a quick poll for the audience. So the first question is, this is for our audience, just to make sure we all know what you're currently doing. So how many lead generation strategies do you currently have? And the second question is, do you practice your messaging in person before putting it in cold email? So we'll wait a couple of seconds for the answers to come in. And by the way, just to give, I'm sorry, I forgot to cover this at the introduction. So just to give a structure of this session, so we're going to be doing the presentation for around 40 to 45 minutes, and then we will open up a Q&A session so that you can ask all your answers and get them answered, ask all your questions and get them answered by Gavin. So whatever questions you have, there is a Q&A section at the bottom. So please provide your questions there, and we will get them answered at the end of the session. Awesome. So we're going to close the poll right now. Last 5 seconds. Yes. Awesome. So we have 87% saying 2 to 4. So that is predominantly the largest section. So 2 to 4 lead gen strategies, and 10% say I have just one strategy, 3% say 4 to 8, and nobody says greater than 8.
Yep. Okay. Awesome. Good questions. Thank you. So today, what you're going to quickly go through is how I found the right sales strategy, how we tested the market to make sure that strategy, or to work through that strategy, helping our potential clients through their buying journey, which is a key part of the actual strategy, and then how we built a systematic lead generation strategy to accompany the sales strategy as well. And then there's some key takeaways at the end. So I just want to set the scene, the competitive landscape that we were entering, just to give you some context of what we were up against. So Red Eye is an engineering drawing management company. It was a startup based in Brisbane, had 20 employees, but we were competing against the likes of Autodesk and ProjectWise, to name a few. SAP was in there as well. They're massive Fortune 500 companies, billions of dollars of turnover. And these competitors were entrenched in all clients and all markets. So they already had the advantage of talking to these clients. But the challenge was, the problem that we solved existed for a very long time, or the opportunity that we were solving had existed for a very long time. But the clients were struggling to quantify the impacts because they'd been around for so long. And the competitors weren't paying attention to this problem because it was a really complex problem. But basically the problem is creating a single source of truth for engineering content that would be able to be used across thousands of employees, like water utilities and power utilities, where Autodesk and ProjectWise were more of design tools for managing CAD drawings and things like that. So they weren't in this space, but they were being used kind of as a proxy solution, for want of a better term. So, and then the average deal size in our across all clients was about $3 million. Some were a little bit higher, some were a little bit lower. So my journey along the way is, when I first come into this industry, I knew nothing about engineering content. So I wanted to speak to as many ideal buying profiles as I could, to understand their problems, what they were doing, the organizational objectives, just to see where we fit in the scheme of things, understand their pressures, like the profiling the people who were the ideal buyers, like mostly the people who bought us were middle-aged men in their 40s, family men, who were long-time employees of these businesses. So we wanted to get an understanding of how they saw the problems that we solved. Did they make it a priority? Was it a priority for them? If it wasn't, how could we make it a priority? But I also wanted to test our messaging and value proposition. So this exercise here, engaging with these clients, it took a couple of years to iterate and test and frame our message accordingly. Now, at the end of it, I realized my expertise wasn't in talking about engineering content, because engineers go to university for many years for that, or there's the draftsmen or design people who were far better experts in that space. And I would just not sound very professional if I was trying to talk to them in that space. My expertise came in helping them see the problem to make them take action. And that's a key part of the strategy. Most businesses that I've learned, and even what I deal with today, only speak in solutions. They don't take the time to quantify the problems. And that's a key part of getting people to buy consistently. And then what I did was slowly transition into other mediums once I could get that messaging working, like from cold email from conferences to cold email and things like that. So, and we'll talk about that for our lead generation in a second.
So just a quick question on the previous slide, Gavin. So you mentioned you did speak to most of your ideal buying profiles. How were you able to get them to calls and come and talk to you? Did you use some kind of a strategy where you gave them some gift in exchange for their time? What was your strategy there?
My strategy there was to pique their interest, because they want to keep on top of new technology that was coming out, to see how B2B SaaS technology is going to change their workforce and how they're like digital twins and a digital future. Digital engineering was coming into its own back then. So I was saying, hey, we will share with you what new Australian startups are doing to take on this space out of your own interest so you could keep on top of industry news. And they were quite interested in that. So it's sparking, that's when I was going on what are their pressures or what are their interests? Because if I knew that their pressure was to stay ahead of technology, I would frame the message to pique their interest, to get them on a call to talk about digital engineering, which was a hot topic in those industries at the time. So, and it was to educate them first. So, yeah, and offer value basically. So, in those businesses, that we just wouldn't be allowed to offer them the gift to do research because of probity and government rules. We just weren't allowed to offer that. So.
Got it. Okay.
Yeah. So if anyone's in this space where they're looking to enter a new market, or they're just starting in a new business and want to do, or they're tasked with lead generation, or maybe you're a CEO, I've saw a couple of CEOs here, this is what I would recommend to do: is conduct research with your ideal target clients. Call them and ask them to do a couple of minutes of research. And this is exactly what I did. And I was able to build out a holistic strategy from it. So I spoke to between 20 and 50 buyers inside organizations. And at the end, I asked them if they had 1 minute to speak about our offering or what we were doing. So, and also we were talking about digital engineering as well. And I was relating what we solved, our product, to what their problems were in their business. I knew that they had multiple sources of truth. It was very inefficient to manage data, and that happened to be our value proposition. So I was relating to that. But my aim was not to be perfect on the first call. Over the series of 20 or 50 calls, even there was conferences in there as well, my goal was to get better and apply an iterative approach, fail fast, try not to make the same mistake twice. And at the end, I got reasonably good at it. And then once I was able to do that, then I would transfer that to cold email, which we'll talk about that strategy a little bit later. Now, this is how we crafted our unique strategy. So the goal is to become experts in the problems we solve. People, because they were struggling to quantify it, if people couldn't quantify the problem, then they were less likely to take action, because that ticket price was so high, at least 20,000, upwards of 45,000, when they weren't spending that money on a platform anyway. If we didn't articulate that the problem was 10x or 20x greater than that, there's no way that they would take action. They have a responsibility, or they had a responsibility in their business to be conservative with their funds, to not spend that much money and not sign a $3 million contract until they could see that they were getting a $30 million benefit or thereabouts. So I became an expert in helping them quantify their problems. Because if I could help quantify their problems, I would create the need for change. I would articulate what the problem was in industry and in their business and go, did you know this is costing a certain amount of money, but we could solve it for 1/10 of that? And that sparked their interest. Until I did that, we would go round in opportunities. We would check in every 3 months or 6 months, and they just weren't moving forward. So we had to measure the real value that we provided. Now, the real value we provided is what was valuable to the client. So businesses make a decision to purchase something typically on three levers. One's a revenue generating exercise. If I spend $100, I want to make 1,000, or if I spend $1,000, I want to be able to save $10,000, or I want to improve risk. I want to reduce risk. So basically framing our real value in terms of what the client was, what perceived to be value, was really critical in here as well. And I'll show you how we did that. Now, because we're a startup, we had to engage earlier in the buying journey. If we waited for the client to come to market, they'd have a fully formed idea. And it was framed mostly by the competitors in the market. Like, if we waited for them to come to market, they would come out with the functionality of what Autodesk was, or what ProjectWise was, or what SAP was, and we could not compete because we were so we had so many less features. It just wasn't It wasn't an equal playing field. So we had to engage earlier and frame the problem in their world and frame the problem in a way that our solution would uniquely solve. And that would give us a competitive advantage over those big Fortune 500 companies. So our goal here, what we had to do was create an ROI of 10 to 20x to prove the value. Like for like just wasn't enough. It was like for like, or 4 to 1 or 5 to 1. Why wouldn't they just go with Autodesk or ProjectWise? Because it's less risky. If they were going to go with a strange startup, if we provided demonstrable, exceptional return on investment, then they were more likely to go with us because they would want that tangible outcome in their business, and we could prove it as well. Now, once we crafted this, we were able to turn this into a repeatable process that was a repeatable framework, but we could add to it with every client, and we could get better and better and better. And after we run 3 or 4 clients through it, then we had a really strong, unique strategy. That was a differentiated strategy.
So I have a question here, Gavin.
Yeah.
So this is probably something that most startups struggle with, right? So you have some of the giants who are already in your market. They are a lot more matured, and it's not a level playing field, as you mentioned. And it becomes very difficult for startups like us to message our value proposition so clearly that they see a reason to not go to the bigger players and try out us. So the create an ROI of 10 to 20x seems very catchy, but at the same time it sounds very salesy as well, right? So how do you what kind of content, what kind of messaging did you use to make it not sound too salesy, but at the same time make sure that you are putting across the value proposition clearly? So just some thoughts there.
Yeah, so it's a really good question. So obviously that's used to spark their interest, but a lot of people will throw out those comments to say, hey, you get a 10 to 20x ROI from implementing us, but with nothing really to back it up. So what you really have to understand is the problems that you're solving in the industry. What are the industry problems that exist? And B2B SaaS companies, typically, they solve about 7. One, they fundamentally change the flow of data. That's what they do. But because they change the flow of data, or the way that data is flowing at the moment, is a lot of manual effort is needed to intervene with the data. There's a lot of duplicated processes. There's a lot of disparate systems out there. And there's a lot of, extra headcount or admin effort needed to manage data in a business. So if you think about nearly everyone in here has a B2B SaaS business, is your value proposition is the inverse of that. Automation, less manual steps, less admin effort, and more of a single source of truth, more real-time visibility, saving time, right? So if you can articulate the industry problem, and then if you can quantify that, basically what we did in this strategy was we would create calculators to articulate the value that we would offer. So in this, we would create a simple calculator to say, hey, you've got 1,300 workers on site across 1,300 workers in your business across 5 sites. You have internally developed software. Your estimated cost saving over 3 years was $14 million by reducing headcount needed to manage those people or manage documents. So behind it is all some complicated data that the technical founders are the secret to being able to do this. Your subject matter expertise and industry know-how is really key to developing this type of ROI tool. Now, I'll give you an example. A client that I'm working with at the moment, he was getting stuck in his sales process. He goes, they weren't just going forward, they were getting stuck in a certain stage. And I was like, they are doing this kind of business case justification without you, with or without you. And he goes, I don't think they are. And I said, I bet you they are. So we developed a calculator, and he went back to them, and he managed in 30 minutes to show them that they would reduce the cost of a docket from $9 to $4. And the manager on the other side said, we paid a consultant thousands and thousands of dollars and 2 or 3 months worth of work to get to that same number that you did in 30 minutes. Now, he cemented himself as a subject matter expert, right? And it changed the conversation in the business, and it unblocked and showed the ROI. So this is one example of a calculator. This is another example that we used at Redeye. The problem was so large that we did a survey. We surveyed their users in their system. So the users come back and said, we're doing about 4,500 searches a week on average of 14 minutes of drawing. So that equates to 1,000 hours just per week, not per month. It's 4,000 hours per month, but $100,000 per week is spent just searching for information on $100 per hour. So that immediately indicated there was a massive inefficiency in their business and got us into the door to explore. We began demonstrating the ROI in that business. Now, there's quantitative ROI, but there's also qualitative ROI. So there's risk that it's hard to measure. So in this case, what I've developed is a risk calculator to say, hey, well, what's your problem in your business? In this case, users can't access drawings outside business hours. Well, what's your process and what's the impact? It could really be serious if an incident happened outside of business hours. Okay, well, what's your likelihood of the risk? Okay, that's 20. And then we would say our solution and we would reduce the risk. And at the end of it, there was a significant reduction of qualitative risk. So we were demonstrating the ROI in a risk reduction. And if we go back to the calculator, it's an operational cost reduction and also is an operational cost reduction. So we're covering the ROI, but also demonstrating it with calculators and then demonstrating it with our client testimonials as well, our client case as well. So you're right, just saying 10 to 20x ROI without anything to back it up is salesy, and people will not trust you if you're telling them, if you're actually not being honest. You need to be able to develop these tools and have these ready to go. Does that make sense?
Yeah, absolutely. I think the other takeaway that we can get from here is when you're reaching out to a potential customer, a lot of the research upfront is really important because you cannot really articulate the ROI clearly if you don't really know much about the prospect. So I guess that is one of the crucial places where you spend time before you even start reaching out to your prospects.
Correct. So it depends on the industry. Some industries will be revenue generating, revenue focused, and you know that, but government organizations aren't revenue focused. They're operational cost and risk focused. So typically, so you will know the industry you're going into and you could make it a best guess assumption whether they're revenue generating. You'd frame your ROI based on them making money with you, or you would reduce costs. And then you could talk about outcomes as well. Sure. Yeah. Awesome. So this is how the strategy evolved over time. So we really, this is basically the structure of our stages in our pipeline. Obviously, we have the outbound sequencing software to generate conversation for lead generation as an example. But then we would have a discovery call and we would get into a demo. But what we wanted to do here is improve the context of what we needed to do. We wanted to align our sales funnel to be the same stages that a company must go through in order to purchase us. So most businesses, and I would almost guarantee if anyone's having problems with their sales strategy here, they'd be able to get through lead generation, do a discovery call and a demo. And then a lot of the majority of time, opportunities are getting stuck past the demo, or people are sending a proposal after the demo, but the opportunities aren't progressing. So one of the reasons I learned is, or what I did was, I'd show the demo and I'd be focusing on the outcomes demo. But at the end of the demo, I would say, you are not ready to buy us now. I would say, I'm taking Redeye or I'm taking our platform off the table. What I'm going to do is I'm going to help you quantify the problems or the current state or the current business processes in your business that we can help you improve. So because most businesses only are talking solutions, but because SaaS products or B2B SaaS products are largely intangible, what they really do is improve a business process. So we need to be able to give context to the problems that we're solving. So people go, oh, it's actually costing me $100,000 or it's costing me $50,000 this current way with extra headcount or time delays. Yes, I need to solve that with the product. So I would actually insert a couple of workshops here or those calculators that I showed. And then once they said, yes, okay, that makes sense, then we would move forward and then scope out what they needed from the platform. So this helped us give context on what we needed to do next in the sales process. So if they hadn't done their business case, we knew that it was never going to get over the line. Now, if we're dealing with a tier 3 business or a tier 2 business, they still need to see value in the purchase. So this way we did this was we would lead them towards sales outcomes. We would align them on the journey and show them how we would help them get there. And we would always be maximizing the value along the way. Surrender before is engaging earlier in the sales process allowed us to build stronger relationships, work on the law of reciprocity. So people would go, oh, they're a really great cultured business. We want to work with them. By the time they go to market, they're just asking everyone for a price, but we've done the work up front to demonstrate our culture, how we work with them, solve real world problems and be industry leaders. That was what we were aiming to do. And we were customer focused. Everything we did was customer service focused. We wanted to give them a great experience along the way. Think of it like a guide. We wanted to anticipate their needs, make their journey easier, develop tools along the way. And that's how we shaved off time up to 75% of the sales process, because we would have tools that would cut down 2 weeks here, 2 months here, 3 weeks here. And that's how we shaved off time, because they would have to go away and do the work. Otherwise, we'd say, hey, we've actually got all these tools that you can go and implement now. You don't have to do any of this. We can help you. So, and that was even down to a set of requirements. If our clients have to go out to tender, we would give them a set of requirements to go, you need to ask for this when you go to tender, for a SaaS-based, latest cutting edge SaaS platform for engineering drawing management. And I went, okay, great. That's just saved us 3 months of requirements gathering. So,
sure. So before you go on with this, I have one question for the audience. So most sales processes, they get stuck somewhere. For most companies, it is somewhere, after the demo, as you mentioned. For some of them, it's more, on the pricing. So a question for the audience is, where do you see your sales process, being stuck at? Is it after the demo? Is it, after the intro call, people don't show up? Or is it after, you send a proposal where you are discussing pricing? So the audience, do you guys want to share where your sales deals usually get stuck at? For me, it is mostly, the process after the demo. So getting the customers to start doing a trial. That is where we face our majority of the challenges. So audience, do you guys want to, you can post it on the chat here, just letting us know where do your sales process typically get stuck at.
Yeah.
After a demo, mostly after the demo.
Yeah.
I think the process that you explained, where you are establishing the value proposition clearly, the outcome that you would want your prospect to achieve by using our solution, that needs to be explained throughout the process, right from the intro call, especially during the demo. What I see as one of the problems that most of the salespeople do is during the demo, we focus more on the product ourselves rather than, what solves for the customer. So I guess that is where most of us would probably be stuck.
Yeah, before we spoke today, Surrender, we said, if you ask this question, I can almost guarantee that most people get stuck after the demo. And that's because, in my experience, is yes, they're doing a feature-based. Most people do a feature-based demo. They're doing it like when I first started, I was like, have a look at how great Red-Eye is. If you click this button here, you click that button there. It's so easy to use. You don't need a lot of training, and that's impactful. But it doesn't really give them a sense of how you solve their problem. And when you think about it, doing an outcomes focused demo, when you're you've got to continually talk about the as is process. You go, hey, Surinder, when we spoke about that problem and it took this amount of time, what I'm going to run you through this platform is how we do this, and it'll shave this much time off it. And you're going continually from the as is process to the to be process. Now, we see this a lot in other industries. The fitness industry, when they show you someone who's lost a lot of weight, you can't really see how impactful that is until you see them before they lose the weight. So we need to continually remind them of how inefficient and, for want of a better word, fat their current business processes are, because we want to actually slim them down and make them better. And it works in other industries, and we need to, and that's where, and the other thing is not leading them through the sales process. We know that they've got to do some kind of, even if it's a $30 subscription, if I wanted to use a $30 subscription, but I still had a boss, I would still probably need to get permission from that boss. So arming them up with the tools and the ROI conversation to say, hey, it's only $30 a month, but you'll be able to up your outbound emailing by 200 or 300 a month and save you up to 30 hours a month. Yeah, that's a good ROI, right? That's a massive ROI. So we're not leading them to outcomes. That's probably where it comes in. There was another introduction call as a service company. The service company is exactly the same thing. What outcome will they provide? Will they gain from implementing you as a service company? Not the service that you do, but what's the benefit from them? And it's very similar. B2B SaaS, software as a service, its service is in there. It's almost exactly the same. And after the demo, yeah. So one of the things we did here is leading the client through, I'm just going to go back to make sure we click on here, is for any sale to occur, value must be perceived. People have to see that they're getting a substantial amount of value for them to make a purchase. You would just not go to a supermarket or a shops and buy a pair of jeans for $500 if you didn't think that they were worth $500. It just can't happen. So we need to focus on demonstrating value. And that largely come in that problem definition stage. So this is where we created tools to demonstrate an ROI based on their objectives. Now, we also help them write a business case, because the philosophy was there. If we could help them write a business case to get approval to buy our platform, then I would take that business case, make it generic. And when I was speaking to someone the next day or the next week, I would say, by the way, we have a business case that might help you articulate the value we provide to give you some context to move forward in this. So we're using operationally proven content that helped us get sales in the past. So we would build up a library, and as we build up this library, we would be able to pull that content out at the right time in the sales process without actually creating that from the start. And we focused on demonstrating both the direct and indirect impacts. Nearly everyone knows what the direct impacts are from implementing a product, but it's the indirect impacts where you get the multipliers. So for instance, what I mean there is, say there's a delay in someone doing some work. Now, the indirect impacts could be they're part of a team of 4. So it's not only them, but it's a whole team of 4 is delayed. Or maybe it's the rework going back out somewhere if they couldn't get the right information coming back to the office. So focus on both the direct and indirect impacts as well. And again, I became a subject matter expert. And even to this day, I can help founders unpack what those issues are that they're facing and help them solve that in their business. I can't overestimate for anyone on this call, become a subject matter expert in helping your clients see the problems in their business and measure them. If you can do that and you can demonstrate a sufficient ROI, then this is where most people would decide to buy you. And that's half the battle. And differentiated ourselves. We differentiated ourselves from the outset, how we engage with them from even lead generation all the way through to contract signing. My goal was to differentiate ourselves, to stand out. Even if it was a like for like ROI with a competitor, I believed if we differentiated ourselves enough, we were able to we would win the deal because we built on the law of reciprocity, and they would like us as a business, and people buy from people they like. And created a strong need for our solution. Most SaaS businesses don't have a sales problem. Most SaaS businesses have a demand problem. I'm sure anyone on this call today could take orders for 20 new clients like within the next 2 hours. You might have a delivery problem, but what you're missing is the demand for your product. So this is why we need to work on demand. And the strongest form of demand is need. It comes in 3 stages. It comes in interest, want, and then need. So if you can create a strong need for your solution, it will fix a lot of your sales problems. After we achieved all this, sales become a lot easier.
This is quite fascinating and simple at the same time, though. So if you look at it from the customer's point of view, you're talking about things that you would want to hear as a customer. Is how can I solve my problem? And it is simple and fascinating at the same time. But how and when did you know that this was the right strategy for you? Did you have any measures, or how did you was it a gut feeling, or how did you know?
So with long sales cycles, one of the things with high ticket prices is it shows the flaws in your sales process, because the target markets, there's not a lot of target markets. When you have a big potential client base, sometimes you just jump from client to client. If they're not interested, you go, that's just the market. But we were lucky. So we would have these interactions, and I've done everything that everybody does in any sales, feature-based demos, and I was getting the same reaction, nothing going forward. As soon as we change it to outcome-focused demos and focus on helping quantifying the market, the reaction in the meetings were immediately different. Like we were saying, so we're going to help you quantify. Yes, that's exactly what we need to do now. And we're like, we never knew that they needed to do this. We just stumbled across it. So how we knew we're on the right strategy is, you don't know, you piece together the strategy as you go, but what works for your business, or we did. But the action to market was, yes, that's what we need to do next. Okay, yes, we would love your help to do it. So we were holding their hand through the sales process. And in some cases, it was still long, but they were far more receptive and far more forthcoming with information. And like a lot of the people here, I'm sure after the demo, people get ghosted, right? They just weren't taking calls back. And that was going away because people were, yes, this is where we're up to now. I presented the business case for change. It's going to a committee for approval. Yes, we got approval for committee. Now we need to do requirements gathering with the different user groups in the business. That might take a couple of months. I go, well, actually, I've got a document for that. Can I help you with that? That'll take off 80% of your time there. Yes, that'll be fantastic. So I knew it was working when people were going out to market, and all that information was coming back to us. So we were just answering our own user requirements that were set up for our system. So the market will tell you instantly when you do something different, you'll get a different reaction. It may not be a sale, but it will be a different reaction to what you've been previously getting. And that's what we got. So yeah, the market would not continually act the same, let's say for a couple of months from what people are getting now, and then go at the end, yes, okay, we'll buy it. They will change their behavior the whole way through. You'll be able to see the organizational behavior will change. Does that make sense?
Absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah. I'm a very big proponent in this strategy is words are words. Like with an organization, if you have a really great demo and they go, that's fantastic, I never believe it until they do something the next meeting or their behavior changes after the meeting. Because if they do change their behavior or they do something to demonstrate it was great, then that means a lot more than words.
Sure.
So where does a lead generation strategy fit into this? So the strategy was a subset of the entire sales strategy. Once we understood what we wanted to do, the type of clients that we wanted to chase, the type of buyers and the problems that we were solving, that really formed part of the sales strategy. So we used data to gather from different client interactions all the time. And we needed to test different markets systematically. When I started, the company was in mining. Then the mining crash happened in Australia. So we had to diversify and test different markets. So my CEO come to me and said, mining's not going to go ahead anymore. I need you to create me a list of industries and come back to me. So I tested electricity, power utilities, water utilities, oil and gas, transport, healthcare, defense, and government. So I tested all those industries. So, but to do that, it got very confusing very quickly because there was multiple buyers. So what we needed to do was create that strategy. They all had slightly different lead gen strategies as well. And we needed to avoid areas where we didn't have a competitive advantage. So if we couldn't create a competitive advantage, if we were going head to head with the likes of Autodesk, we were going to lose every single time. So this is why if we would compete with an open tender that come out, we would lose 99% of the time because those big companies would have been in there and have a bigger, no one ever got fired for buying IBM. We had to create a different way. So I come up with this to give context, to understand our market tiers. We wanted to narrow down our competitive advantage. So I broke down the markets into 3 tiers, tier 3 being the lowest, tier 1 being the highest, like a large multi-person organization. Now, as you look at this, as you're in tier 3, you would expect the total addressable market to be high, but the competitors to be high as well. You expect the revenue to be low. And then as you transcended through the markets, the competitors would narrow, but the total addressable market would lower as well. But as the revenue increase, you would expect the features and outcomes as tier 1 clients would expect would increase as well. So what we did is we started with that framework to understand the markets we wanted to explore. So we narrowed down our competitive advantage where our feature set would be best. And then we built a lead gen approach to test each segment approach for different tiers, our messaging, our buyers, who our competitors were, what their problems were, would slightly change across the tiers. And then we identified the variables to test. So we could only test the variables that we could search on. So this is where we were testing the market. So what we did is we created, this is an example of some variables for tier 1s. So I was testing Australia and New Zealand, these different industries, size of organization, the decision makers. So that's largely determined by what your platform you're using that would allow you to search. What we did is we tested compelling messaging outreaches. Were they focused on operational cost reduction, or were they focused on safety reduction or safety improvements or risk reduction within their business? But we would test this messaging combinations between asset manager and the safety incidents or their problems in the tier. So we needed to know our numbers. What were our numbers that we needed to hit in order to hit our goals as well? And we weren't optimistic. We didn't want to be optimistic and be lazy in our lead gen outreach. We wanted to be pessimistic and do more than we needed to do. Optimism did not help us in this. And we created a naming convention so we could track this over time. So we knew after about 2 or 3 months, we could go back to the sequences and line them up with the list that we created and see which industries were more receptive to our message. And eventually with us, if you look on the Red Eye website, if they still have the referenceable clients, it became very apparent that the power industry was really receptive to our message and the healthcare industry wasn't. Healthcare was focused on patient care. And so we were able to turn off healthcare and ramp up our work into our lead gen efforts and sales efforts into the power industry. And that's how we started getting more clients. So we'll be able to track the results. So I guess the outcome of that is I was able to close about $30 million of deals in my time at Red Eye in total contract value. And it didn't actually, I'll come back to that in a second, but what it did is actually helped us reduce the length of sale up to 75% because we developed tools and workshops and strategies to get people through, and we knew their journey, and we weren't getting taken on dead end roads or going round and round in circles with clients because we were leading them to outcomes. We had a plan every single meeting to get them to the next stage. And the most important thing is we deliver clients in an excited state. there is very different ways we can deliver clients. If you deliver a client on a 5-year term that has a completely different expectation of the value you provide, they are going to be nothing but a challenging relationship for 5 years, and it's going to cost a lot more money to manage than it is the revenue that you generate. So one of the things we wanted to do is deliver clients that were so excited to get started. We clearly articulated the value we provided through outcomes, and they knew exactly our shortcomings, and they wanted to work with us. Where I've seen other people let clients fill in the gaps, and it's been nothing but pain for customer success and account management for the 2 or 3 years or 5 years that the deal was around. And once we were able to do this, was able to outperform those global competitor sales teams. The best story I've ever had was I engaged with a company in a September of one year, closed them in a September of the next year. And I met a guy who was my nemesis, and he goes, I'm dating a girl in that team, and I did not know that come out to tender. And he goes, it was already done before we got it, like before it even come out. And it's just the power of engaging early and anticipating their needs. And yeah, I've got one back on him on that one.
These are really impressive numbers, and it's quite exciting. So this 30 million plus, dollars over 5 years, was it like, you close $6 million every year, or you increased it over a period of time? Could you talk about that distribution?
Yeah, so like if you think about my time there for 5 years, it was the first couple of years, I may have got one sale in the first couple of years, right? I was working closely with the CEO. We were still figuring out the strategy. And then as we started figuring out the early parts of the strategy, those clients were on those journeys. So I think by about year 3, 4, there was another 2 or 3 deals. And then in year 5 is where I started closing the most. It was really starting to hockey stick growth. And it was, by the time year 5 come along, everyone who was engaging with us through a tender process, and I had worked with them through their sales journey, they would come back to us with all our documentation, like our user requirements. They were even using our terminology on data. And our competitors would have been going, how do we compete against this? We can't do it. We knew that they couldn't do it. It was over before the tender started. And but it was an iterative process over time. And by year 4 and 5, I was able to get up to speed. I was producing a positive ROI by year 1 because of the contract value. But by year 4 and 5, I was doing significantly better. So I guess the key takeaways for today are the sales strategy must account for sales principles. The sales principles are, we cannot make a sale until someone decides to buy, and a sale is a journey. So there's a beginning and an end. We need to be able to articulate the beginning, which is the current state. And also, people don't like to be sold to anymore. So we have to share stories and deliver information at the right period of time. Lead generation must be part of your sales strategy. It has to be part of your sales strategy because it's all connected. And become a subject matter expert in your field. What problems do you solve, and how do you help your clients articulate the processes in their business? And differentiation starts from the planning stage. It really starts from the very beginning. And don't be over optimistic in your numbers. If anything, be pessimistic so you do more work than you need. And measure your client's value measure your client's problems to add value in a sale. Most people add on things. Oh, if you buy us at this price point, I'll give you this. But if you can make the problem 10 times bigger than what they thought, you're adding value without giving anything away. All right. That's everything. Surrender.
Awesome. That's great. So let's see if we have a few questions from the audience. Guys, do not go anywhere. So after the Q&A session, we have something exciting to offer to all of you who've attended this session.
Yep.
So just go through a few questions that we have from the audience. So one of the question is interesting is, this strategy worked for large ticket sizes. But let's say, our ticket sizes are small, like $3,000 to $5,000 a year kind of deals. What is different there? Does this strategy work, or is a modification required?
No, it still works. Like, I think you would, what in a strategy of 3 to 5,000, like people still want to see an ROI of 10 to 20x, right? They're not just going to pay $3,000 or $5,000. They want to get a significant return. But you want to make sure you develop those calculators, then maybe figure out a way to deliver that calculator more efficiently than doing one-on-ones, because it'll take you too much money to cost of customer acquisition if you're doing that every single time. But there is no harm in doing it, walking before you can run. Excuse me, making sure that if you deliver a calculator, walking through with a couple of potential clients to make sure they go, oh, that is valuable. Yes, I'll purchase. And then slowly trying to automate that process, whether you put that on your website, whether you send them a survey, whatever you do, but slowly start automating that so you can you get the same effect over time. When you figure out that you're not getting that same outcome, then you figure you're probably at the point that you can't automate anymore. But everyone needs to see value to make a purchase. People just won't spend $5,000, $3,000 or $5,000 on something without expecting a return. So it still holds true.
Great. So the next question. So do you believe in social selling? So we're talking about using only probably LinkedIn as a platform, without having any other channels like email or phone call. So do you think social selling works today?
So I think you need to do your lead generation where your target buyers are. So if you're selling to doctors, they're more than likely not going to be on LinkedIn. So, but if your ideal buyers are going to be on LinkedIn, it depends on your people. Still, again, need to see value. Like if they're buying off LinkedIn, if you're articulating the value really, if it's a low ticket price, you could probably articulate it really simply. But if it's a higher ticket price, you still need to go through that process. Using LinkedIn for social lead generation, I think it's a great way, but we still need to figure out a way to get off that if it's a high ticket, depending on what that ticket price is. But social interest potentially, but does it create a strong need for your platform? Like how do you create strong demand, which is a form of need? If you could do that on LinkedIn a really simple way, go for it. If it works, excellent. I can't see that without actually understanding more information about your business. So, yeah.
Awesome. The next question is from Santosh. So Santosh's question is, what tools have you used majorly for your outreach campaigns? And do you use videos in your outreach? Does that work better than using text? That's a question from Santosh.
Yeah, so I try to get simple. So I'll use a sales outreach platform. Like I've used SalesGear before. I've used Clenty back when Clenty was I was their first client years ago. I've used Zoom Info for contact details, but I try to keep it simple. I implemented the gentleman last month that we started implementing his long lead generation campaigns to a certain degree. But I will try to use just that lead gen software. As far as visuals, I've tried visuals. It depends again on your target audience. If you're targeting millennials and they love little memes and things like that, so be it. But if your ideal clients are 50-year-old men and women who don't particularly like memes, or they're in a serious industry, you might want to steer clear of it. But we have to frame the message for the benefit of the person receiving it. If your ideal target clients like it, go for it. Like you have to deliver the message in a way that makes sense to your target markets. But I would only use lead generation software or sales outreach software to get onto a call and off email as quick as I can. Most people try to sell too soon on email. The goal of that is to get to a phone call and start a relationship if you can.
Awesome. So we have time for just one more. We have a few more questions. We'll probably answer them offline and send it across to the audience. But we have time for one more question. This will be the last question. So have you made any adjustments to your demo process or the follow-up approach based on feedback from customers who have ghosted you in the past? So we talked about people ghosting you after the demo. So what adjustments did you make?
Yeah, so some of the problem, what I used to do, we get excited, right? So we'd go, we do a discovery call, and then we'd go, bring all your team and we'd do a demo. Now, as soon as you get more than one person or two people inside a demo from the client side, it really stifles them having honest conversation. So we'll do a part of a initial discovery call and go, hey, well, based on our conversation, it seems like I should show you what we do. So I'll do an outcome focused demo with just one person, because what I want to do is have honest, frank conversation about the real problems in their business and actually test my value proposition based off the information I get from the discovery call and that initial demo, because I want to understand, I want to test it. And even if I don't get it right with that one person and we have a bit of rapport, I can change it. Now, what I want to do from that single person demo, then go into a group demo. And instead of asking questions, I'm just reconfirming what I learned to show that I've done my homework and I've done my research. And then at the end, I'm just asking, is there anything else? That way, because they're not going to be honest, or you might get that one person that's belligerent and is really loud and stops anyone from talking. So I want to defend against that. I want to prepare for that. So I'll do a single person demo first, and I'll do a group demo afterwards, reconfirming or just demonstrating or regurgitating everything I learned in discovery call. And it's actually tailoring, and I've had a lot of success with that. So, and I'm also focusing on outcomes, not features, but in their business. Yeah.
Great, awesome. So I think we've come to the end of these sessions. So as I promised, we have a couple of exciting offers for you. So Gavin, please go ahead.
Okay. Right. So one of the things that I've done as well is I've put together a lead generation strategy course, and the goal with this is to basically help anyone who's where I was 5 or 6 years ago. It's a strategy course to help you not necessarily write your emails, although there's a bit of email writing in there as well. It's about how to manage your strategy. So how to create a cold email strategy, how to calculate how many sequences you need to send out on a weekly basis to hit your yearly targets. And also loosely talks about other lead gen strategies. So if anyone wants to join up, it's free. There's a link to that there in the chat here. It's at salesmarketfit.co, and we'll give you the link to that later. And if anyone else is having any trouble with the sales strategy, you can book a one-on-one time for call for me as well. I saw Venkatesh, you had a question there as well. So if you want to book in a time now, happy to give you some guidance and talk that through also. So and then the next one is, this is over to you, Surinder.
Awesome. So yeah, so SalesGear is a sales engagement platform that helps you execute your outbound efforts. So you can send out emails, make phone calls, reach out through LinkedIn, and generate leads for your business. And SalesGear is a all-in-one tool that provides everything that you need to do from an outbound point of view. You do not need multiple tools to do multiple things. Everything is provided with SalesGear under one umbrella. So the offer that we have is for all the attendees today. So we have 50% off on all of the SalesGear plans. We do have a 14-day free trial. So feel free to sign up for the 14-day free trial, use the product, and then if you're happy, we are happy to provide a 50% discount on all the plans that we have. Awesome. So with that, we come to a close. Gavin, thank you so much. I understand it's close to midnight there, and thank you so much for doing this call and passing so many insights that are really very hard hitting, and at the same time we all were able to very much relate to what you were explaining. So thank you so much for taking out the time, and we're looking forward to more help from you with your free course as well. And the audience today have been great, very engaging. Thank you all for taking time out and supporting us in this webinar. So wherever you are, have a great evening, have a great night. And Gavin, thank you so much again.
Yeah, no worries. And thanks. There's some other questions on here as well. If anyone wants to reach out to me on LinkedIn, I'm happy to answer them as well. Yeah, thank you for having me. And yeah, you guys are doing a great job over at SalesGear, and good luck to everyone.
All right. Thank you, guys. Have a good day.
Thank you.